Dr. Ngidi, this is the last time I'm calling you Dr. Ngidi. I'm going to call you Ndu.
Don't even
Unjani, how are
know.
you?
Don't even know why you would call me Dr. Ngidi. I'm good. How are you? I'm
No,
tired.
what's exhausting you? Ngiyakusukela actually, because I know that's one term that no doctor wants to hear.
Ah, comes with a lot of responsibilities on our thing. No, but I'm okay. I'm just really, really fatigued. Actually, I think I'm burning out. So I'm trying to now take a step back from work a little, just to regain my strength, focus on my mental health.
Hmm.
Academia is
Uh,
brutal.
sorry?
Academia is brutal. It's relentless.
Academia is brutal, hey?
Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir. Interesting that you talk about burning out and mental health in one sentence. And I say this because the conversation revolves around mental health. And I
Yeah.
was having a conversation earlier with an industrial psychologist, and he was saying that actually, when people start talking about burnout, it's actually related to mental issues. And
Mm.
so I want to hear from you as somebody who is now in that space. You said to me that you indicated that your focus is now going to be on mental health because you see the importance of talking about mental health and addressing issues relating to mental health. Maybe you might want to share a bit on why it's important for us to have these conversations.
Well, I think one, because I live with a mental illness. I have a clinical depression diagnosis that I was officially diagnosed when in 2022. Yeah, immediately after completing my PhD. But I think when I look back, I've been depressed, I think, since I was a teenager, as an adolescent, because these feelings have always been there, due to a certain number of things that happened in my life around childhood. So I also realized later on that it is depression. You know, when you start researching why you feel like this, so are you feeling suicidal? Why are you gonna end your life? Why are you constantly tired? Why are you not finding joy and meaning in life? Eventually, I got a word for it. So I think for me, wanting to now venture into the mental health space, especially academically, is because no one is paying attention to that. Well, not let me not say no one, but it's something that is still considered taboo, particularly in our Black communities. We don't talk about it as much as we need to. We often just brush it off as unamamud, you just need to rest. You'll be fine. Just pray about it. I mean, I've heard it all and I've done all, but it doesn't go away until I make an effort or at least a conscious decision to see a therapist and to take antidepressant medication. Now I'm also now on anxiety medication because yeah, I started having these anxieties, but that's related to the work that I do, and the never-ending deadlines, which are often so close to each other. But with regards to mental health, particularly feeling depressed and feelings of loneliness, it's often scary to talk about these things because it feels like you don't appreciate the amount of support and I guess the community you have around you. I mean, I have family, I have friends, but you still, in spite of that, still feel down, still feel depressed, like you're sitting in a deep dark hole. That's one way that I always put it with my therapist. I always tell her that with living with this illness, on my bad days, I'm feeling suicidal. So at least with medication and therapy, you try to find a balance where it doesn't lead you towards suicide. And so we don't talk about these things. We are ashamed of telling people how we feel. A couple of weeks ago, I had a friend who had a mental health a breakdown of some sort. And when I found out it's something that has been happening for a long time, and he was just scared to talk about it. And then it becomes complicated if you're a man and you're black, because there's a lot of stigma attached to it. You know, we are told that men don't cry, khulube indoda, all those words that, in a way seem to counter the the impact of the culmination of everything we go through from childhood to adulthood. We go through so much, and you know, you alienate yourself, you feel isolated, you feel lonely, carry a weight of responsibility and many other aspects of your life that you need to see through. And of course, the pressures of always being perfect, particularly because of the influence of social media, that
Mm,
also has its toll and it has its impact on your mental health. And so you become vulnerable to mental illnesses such as depression. I mean, I'm no therapist, I'm no psychologist, I'm no psychiatrist. I'm just speaking from my own experiences of the hardness and the darkness of constantly negotiating with yourself about why you need to live longer, why you don't have to kill yourself, and all of those things. Those things we don't talk about. And if you
mm,
do talk about it, the first thing, it's like I've even have it recorded in my head. And the first thing people will say is, oh, no, pray about it, you'll be fine.
mm,
And yeah, we've seen. I mean, prayer is good, but sometimes you need so much more than prayer. You need actions. Yeah.
mm. Maybe before I feel like you've said quite much, and we are going to touch on many of the points that you've raised. I want to go the part where you spoke about childhood trauma.
Yeah.
I think that's the exact word you used. How do you know as a child that you're actually experiencing some form of mental health related issue? Because I don't think it's trauma as it happens. It's trauma afterwards. How do you know?
Well, you can't know if there are no words for it, if no one has taught you about it, if no one has spoken to you about it. So I have a son, my son. A couple of days ago, we had an almost break-in at our house. And then I can tell that he's still traumatized by that, but he's able to say, I feel scared, I still feel traumatized, because those are words we've used. Those are words and things we've taught him, and we've allowed him the space that if something is scary, it's okay to say you feel scared. If you're feeling lonely, it's okay to say you feel lonely. If you're feeling depressed, and we had to explain all of these different emotions and illnesses that comes with growing up, because children don't know these things. They have a feeling, they have an emotion, but they don't know how to articulate it. And so when you
Yeah.
start early to make it part of the everyday conversation, you are able then to allow your kid to express how they're feeling. Sometimes it might not necessarily be that they are feeling depressed. I've noted with my son a lot of the times, he would say he's feeling depressed because he's feeling down in that moment, but it's just only bored or feeling lonely because he wants to go and see his friends or play with his friends. With depression, then how you would see that somebody is depressed is if those feelings and that numbness that comes with it, not feelings, emotions that come with it, the mood, the low mood is prolonged. So if it's 1 week, 2 weeks, then you need to start worrying. Unfortunately, with children, they don't have a word for it. They haven't learned how to deal with it, how to address it, largely because our own families don't have the means and the tools and the strategies to deal with it. We just brush it off. Go to your room, go and sleep, go and get some rest. You can sleep it off, but you'll wake up and it's still gonna be there.
Mm,
So yeah, I think it's conversations that we need. We need to start talking about it. We need to start destigmatizing it, and don't think of it as this huge monster that stays under your bed or that follows you like a shadow. It's an illness as much as having a headache, as an illness as like having a stomach ache. It's just that the symptoms are more mental. The symptoms are less visible to the outside world. It's you who feels them. It's you who sees them. It's you who feels the changes that happen.
mm. You're actually taking me back to 2022 when I was still based in Bloemfontein. There
Yeah.
was a time where I was on antidepressants. I think you'll remember that stage.
Yeah.
That was after I came back from hospital. And I remember telling my mom that I've been given this medication because I'm going through a phase. And I remember very well her response to that was, now usugula njalo nje, you know?
Mm.
And it speaks to what you were saying earlier, Uguti. Our parents, they don't take this thing seriously. And when you are still young, what they would say is, "Uborwa yini, ucotshwa yini, umncane kangaka? Hamba
With
ubuka i-TV,
TV,
hamba
you
wenze
have
kanje,
this,
wenze
yeah,
kanje."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So how do we then educate our parents? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put race into this, mainly our Black parents. How do you make them know that actually these are things that could cost lives if they're not taken seriously?
You know what I've seen work is well, I for me I can't really speak for people with parents. I've never been that fortunate, but with at home with my partner, I was being able to take him to my therapy so that she explains what's happening and explain the nature of the illness. Thankfully, I'm not married to somebody who is ignorant. They are open-minded. They know about these things. It was basically just that, just relaying the message about something that he's already aware of and is supporting me through. So I think that's one way, but unfortunately, it's not all of us who have access to therapies. It's not all of us who have access to good mental health care. I mean, look at the state of our public institutions. Excuse me. So for those of us who are fortunate enough to have things like medical aid, we can then allow the process where we seek help and invite those around us, our significant others, our immediate families, so that they are made aware. But I think at the core of everything is we need to constantly speak about this, and those who can speak must never stop speaking about it, even when it irritates, even when it annoys. We need to make people constantly aware, drive it in until it becomes part of their everyday language, because that's another thing. The language is missing from our everyday conversations. When we grew up, we were told ukuthi umuntu has moods. Awunama-moods njalo. When really a person is going through a bipolar, has a bipolar sort of mood. And so I think, yeah, if we don't talk about these things, people will never know. Just like any other illness. The fact that we were aware of COVID and the way that we were made aware was through communication, was through talking about it, and being made aware. So if we're not making the public aware, and this is why I say I want to move now much more towards research on mental health and mental illnesses, particularly for people who are considered vulnerable, your queer communities, your women, Black women, and all of that, and young people. Children also go through what in the academic space we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences or childhood traumas, and they have an impact on children. They might not have the impact as they are growing up because, the body and the mind closes off to protect the child. But as they grow, those things, the post-trauma starts to take its place, to take its course. And that's where you start to see the symptoms of mental health or mental illness in this instance. And so, yeah, really talking at the, because there's not really much you can do. It's not something that you were okay one moment and you start to have a headache and then I'll take you to the doctor, you get your pills. It's a process, because even when it happens, I mean, I've been living with depression for such a long time, but sometimes even when it happens, when I get those depressive episodes, I take a little time to acknowledge it, because I'm like, nah, it's not happening again. It's not the denial. Because then I'll have to brace myself for what's coming. The feeling of emptiness, the feeling of darkness, of loneliness, of suicide, of wanting to be on your own, of wanting to run away, to disappear, and all of those things. So even within us, it's still hard to accept. It's still hard to talk about. It's still hard to face on and address within us. So I imagine that it would be difficult for the next person who's never had to experience such to be able to accept it, to understand it, when we ourselves don't even have the words to articulate what we're going through. I've noticed that when you ask a person, so what is happening? Most of the time they just say, I feel like I'm sitting in a dark space, in a dark, cold space. And, you know, when you're outside looking in, you think that's just you imagining things. How is that affecting you sitting in a dark place? They don't mean it in the literal sense, but because they don't have the words for it, that's the obvious way that you're feeling. You're feeling empty, you're feeling isolated, even with people around. So I think when we start talking about it, then we'll be able to start moving forward.
Where it gets challenging for me? Um, this thing for me is like a silent beast that eats you internally. Sometimes you
Yes.
just don't realize that you're going through that. You don't realize that it's actually charming you, but you do
Mm.
feel that something is sort of like drawing you down.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you feel like you are burning out. In fact, I don't think that's the right example I want to make. you spoke about depression, and sometimes you don't know that you're depressed. I
Mm,
live alone. I'm usually isolated in my space. But then I would sometimes think, because I know about mental health issues, illnesses rather, I would
mm,
sometimes think that I'm depressed, only to find that when I go to spaces where there's loved ones, I would feel absolutely okay.
yeah.
Sometimes that's, you would think the opposite, that it's because you are isolated, only to find that you are depressed, not knowing what it is that is charming you.
Well, what I've seen with depression, Q, sorry to cut you, is that it works best in isolation. It works in silence. It breeds in silence. And so the moments that you go and see your family or you hang out with your friends, your brain focuses on something else. But unfortunately, you still have to come back and be in your space and be alone. And what happens is you encounter these same emotions all over again. And so this is why I say whenever I start to feel like I'm going into another depressive episode, I tell somebody. I start with my partner. I think I'm getting another episode because I know if I don't tell anyone, this thing is gonna fester. It's gonna breed, and it breeds a lot in silence. It wants you isolated. It wants you on your own. It wants you in bed, feeling numb and stuck and hidden under your pillows
Oh
until
God.
you force yourself to come out. Yeah,
It sounds like I'm
yeah.
listening to a horror movie scene. As you say this, I'm thinking of this
That's
movie we
one way
grew
of
up.
putting it.
I'm thinking of this movie we grew up watching. It was called Nightmare on Elm Street. So this
Yeah,
beast would attack you in your sleep. It would be something that happens here, but it would happen
yeah,
literally physically.
yeah.
So now, what do I do if I'm worried about my mental health?
So what helps me is one, avoid being isolated. I know with depression, it pushes you away from people. You could be in a party, you won't know what's happening here. Kumnandi, kodwa wena nje, you just withdraw in your corner and be on your own. So one of the things that I do now is to force myself in those moments. Like I force myself to go to gym, and which I feel has really helped me a lot. I force myself to hang out with friends, and I do make my friends aware that and so a lot of the people that I would hang out with are aware, and so doesn't become foreign to them when at the clear in a moment, and then suddenly I'm quiet, I'm in a zombie-like state. They know one of the most beautiful things that my partner usually do is come and sit next to me and then just grabs my hand and squeeze it. So he knows that he's basically his language saying that I'm here. I can tell you you're not okay, but I'm here. So I don't even have to articulate it anymore because he knows the signs, he knows what to look for. So it could be in a party and the next thing saying clearly, and I've zoomed out of the conversation. Then he comes in and holds me, and then that sense of that immediate sense of security and knowing that somebody is knows and somebody's listening, then gives you a relief, at least even if it's just temporary relief, but you need it in that social space in that moment. So yeah, so I think one way is to force yourself to be social. Like, when it heats, maybe go to gym, maybe take a jog, take your dog out, go and see people. Even if it's not social, just take a walk and see people in the streets. Go out with friend, call a friend, let's go have coffee, let's go have a glass of wine, and that somebody you trust, and then you can tell them, would say, I was going through this, and that's why I wanted to see you.
Mm.
Hopefully they embrace you and not because mental illnesses are rejected.
Hmm. You talk about your partner there, and you are reminding me of a quote by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. God forbid. I swear I'm not an advocate for Chimamanda because I'm quoting her for the second time today. And she was giving a speech, a talk, and there's a part where she said she had been doing many gigs during that period, and she got to this different place. She was with a friend, and nobody could see that she was actually burning out, and it got
Mm,
so bad to a point that she felt like her eyes were drying up, and a friend of hers said, "Don't go on that stage. take the back seat and cancel your gig.
Mm,
And she was just confessing, I'm sorry, that she felt wonderfully recognized. But
mm.
sometimes you don't have people like that friend, you don't have
Yeah,
people like your partner.
yeah.
We may be aware that we are going through a mental health depletion, if I may, and then you try and seek support.
Mm,
What do you then do if you don't get that support? Or better, what do you do if you get support, but then the support doesn't help?
mm. See, that's a difficult one. I really don't know how to address that question because yeah, I've had moments where I was living with this illness, and there was not a lot of support. There was none at all, and it isolates you. So, which is why I'm saying some of the interventions have to come from you. Things like just making a decision to go for a run on your own, because believe it or not, the support will not always be there. It
Yeah.
will not always come in when you want it to. Sometimes it hits you in places and spaces where there's really nobody around or no one to call even. You know how it's always amazing, but how you are always chatting with people on your phone, but the moment you get a depressive episode, your phone feels empty. Like you can't recognize the names, you don't know who to call. Pensani, like uhlala ucabanga ukuthi, oh my God, I'll be bothering ingane yabantu, angifuni ukuba isicefe kuzothiwa nangokundu useqalile nento zakhe. And yeah, that hurts. That just adds to what you're already feeling, and it's not a nice feeling. Yeah, but I think a lot of it has to come from you making it a conscious decision. It's, no, and I want to beat this, at least for today. We'll take tomorrow as it comes, but today I'm making it a conscious decision that I'm gonna fight this, whether it's me walking my dog or going to the gym or running or taking a walk. I'm gonna pull through this moment, this day. What happens tomorrow, I won't, because the moment you're worrying about tomorrow, you start feeling anxious and then anxiety comes through. So,
Mm.
and then now you have another illness on top of another. So if there's no support system near or close, you become your own support system. That's what children who are abused usually do.
I always say, we can't point fingers at people if we are going through something
Yeah.
and we don't articulate what it is that we're going through. The expectation oftentimes is that they would see what's happening, or there would some sort of descent. I don't know. We think
Mm,
miraculously that happens, and then when it doesn't happen, we frown. I know you and I often have these conversations, and you have on numerous occasions said that, uh, it makes you feel bad when you're going through these episodes and your friends don't actually reach out because you assume that by now they know your patterns, if
mm,
I may put them like that. Sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. Um, is that the stage where you feel like, you know what, it seems like the world has abandoned me. My friends, my close friends, are not reaching out. They don't see that I'm at this level now. So what's the point of me standing? Why don't I just take my life? And I asked this, sorry, I asked this because 2 weeks ago I lost a sister that I met in the dance community when I was young. We were in the same
mm,
studio, and she also, as I hear, committed suicide because of the same thing that we're talking about. She had nobody to reach to. The people that she referred to as friends uh, didn't reach out to her.
mm. Ooh, that's heavy. Yeah, you see, that's another thing with so I'm gonna speak about depression because that's the illness I've been living with.
Yeah.
Um, those feelings that you are mentioning are actually also symptoms. This is what I've heard, learned from my therapist. They are also a symptom. You know, when you look in your phone and you don't know who you're gonna call to talk to, and you feel isolated, that's still a symptom. Because there's a lot of people in my phone. There's a lot of people who love me, who adore me. At at the mention or one call, they'll run and be around me. But in those moments, you don't see it, you don't feel it. simply because it's a symptom. It's a depressive symptom that it wants you isolated, it wants you feeling lonely, it wants you to see the world as an empty shell with nobody but yourself in it. Yeah, and you know, it's not a nice thing to live with. There's been times in my life where I thought I won't live to see my next birthday, and I do, but still comes again, and I'm like, yeah, this is it. It's eventually gonna win. I'm not gonna live to see my birthday. Um, but with therapy, so when I start to feel like I'm getting overwhelmed, I simply call my therapist and make an appointment. And thank goodness that I have a very supportive therapist who just is not shy of helping whenever I need them to in an emergency. There's really not much, you know,
Mm.
with mental illnesses. You realize there's not much you can do. It's very difficult to even answer questions about mental health because this, like, it is a you thing. To put it in a, it's a a number 2000 say that's a you problem. It's a you problem, and we experience it differently. Ama symptoms are fine. So, for example, when you know what you have asthma, the asthma symptoms are the same: wheezing, slowness of breath. With mental illness, the symptoms are not the same for different people. Amanye hit hard, amanye are mild, amanye are extreme. Abanye size sithi elokishini bayahlanya ngamakhanda
Mm.
when they're really just mentally ill. So
Mm.
yeah, it's yeah, it's a young triggerisha man.
Sorry, please, don't be. I said to you, I was joking, obviously, but I said, make sure you've got tissue next to you. So
Yeah,
it's a safe space. You own a car if you want to cry.
that's not gonna
Uh,
happen.
Lalela, so my next question now, as a friend, I want to know, at what point do I reach out to you? What would be the indicators? Because you still assume that your friends would see if you are going through something. How do I even approach you? And what meeting?
One of the
Because
things that I
it,
know for sure is when I see Utuq, because now we are connected through social media. When I see Utuq is not engaging in social media, is not posting things, it's been a while. Then and I've had people who do that for me. Hey, Ngidi, angisakuboni, so are you okay? What's happening? I realized a couple of days ago with this friend who had a breakdown. Could say actually, bengihlale ngiyibuza ukuthi hayi bangisamboni, yazi I need to call them, I need to call them, I need to call them. Ngingakwenzi lokho. Only to find ukuthi umuntu is sinking deeper and deeper because that's yeah, but manje usebuyile and we've spoken and you can see it's now a bit active on social media. He comments and posts there and there. But for me, that has been a short tell sign. Would say, reach out. Something is not okay. Yeah.
hmm, we speak much about dealing with mental illnesses,
Yeah.
but how do we prevent them? I don't think we often talk about preventing mental illnesses. And it would be interesting to hear. I know you haven't done research on this.
Um, I haven't seen any, but I'm certain there are. So mental illnesses are usually, for me at least, in my own observation, are triggered by what is happening environmentally. And when I say environmentally, I mean in your social spaces. Could be abuse at home, it could be loss of a loved one, it could be bereavement, and all of those things. Which some of them are natural. You can't avoid them. You can't stop somebody from dying if it's their time. But I think what I've seen that is available might not necessarily be prevention, but ways of coping.
Hmm.
So there are strategies, there are tools, and there are people. There's just one person in your life who just adds value. It could be a friend, it could be a lover, it could be a mom or anyone, a child, even a pet. They really help you to cope and to, I guess, dissuade the attention from what is in here to what is you can actually physically touch. This is why some people self-harm, because the pain is sitting here so much so that you want it out of here and into the physical, and see people started cutting themselves or sitting in a tub of boiling water just to feel external pain, because that moment of relief where you're not living in your head and you're not feeling the pain here. So there are ways that you can cope. Of course, medication and therapy, or just generally talking to somebody you trust, one of the many ways that you can at least cope, and not go into crisis mode.
Mm.
Yeah.
This conversation has made me think of a poem that I once wrote when I was in a junior secondary school.
Mm,
When I was reciting it, I was singing it actually, vocally wounded as I am.
mm,
I still remember the first stanza. It was on HIV and AIDS. I'm HIV AIDS. I'm a killer, a merciless killer. I kill all ages, the guilty and the innocent, the poor and the rich. And I think it fits in our context today on mental health illnesses. I want to know then from you, Ndu, as you tap into this mental health space, what do you think is going to be, or how are you going to approach this? Because people approach this discourse in different ways, from different
mm,
angles. Others, like I said earlier, a friend of mine on correctional services, the other
mm.
on employee wellness. I want to know what your contribution is going to be. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a scientist. I'm a researcher. Part of me making a contribution, at least coming closer to understanding what people go through, is through research, and research that is participatory, action-based research that aims at social change, but also research that is intervention. So I'm currently working on conceptualizing a small-scale study just to test it with queer young men to see and understand their experiences of mental health and what harms or protects them when it comes to mental illnesses and mental health related issues. So yeah, from me, my approach is gonna be through research and of course then writing on the findings.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you hope happens with your findings?
First, I
In
hope that we create knowledge and that people read, and then I mean in platforms like this where I can then talk about something that I now have evidence of, and then start spreading and disseminating the information through different platforms that are available for people, just to bring in the conversation into the fore. We focus a lot on many other things, many other illnesses, public health illnesses, or public health issues. I mean, we talk about them from HIV and AIDS to cancer and whatnot. We all know about these things, but when it comes to mental health or mental illnesses, you never hear an advert, you never hear a program or see a program on TV that focuses directly or addresses mental illnesses directly. If it does, it's just a by the way, an afterthought, and it's just a glimpse, a touch of it, but we haven't went in depth to understanding what it is, how it affects different people, why it affects people, why it happens, how can it be prevented, how can people be supported, and all of those things. And then I think the answers will come from the people who are actually experiencing the illness.
Yeah, true. I learned earlier today from one of my guests that there is a mental health association that offers free services to the general public. I didn't know about that, but
Yeah.
apparently it's something that exists, and it was so refreshing to hear that. And I committed to looking them up, and maybe when I post that episode, I'm going
Mm,
to include the link so that whoever needs assistance can uh, can have ease of access.
mm.
Seeing that you are in higher education, I see your background, your beautiful background there, UKZN. In your area of work, uh, do you think that with everything that you do on a daily basis, interacting with students, the politics in higher education, which many of us know, Do you think those contribute to your mental illness,
Oh, a
or do you
lot.
think generally,
A whole
generally workspaces mess up with our mental
You
health?
know, one of the things that I've been doing this year, this semester, is I've been working in silo, in isolation because, yeah, I got so sick at the start of the year, and no doctor could find what was wrong with me until I saw my therapist and my psychologist, then the symptoms. So now the mental illness is now manifested into physical symptoms, like these ongoing violent headaches, piercing headaches. I'm weak, I can't eat and whatnot. And it all boiled down to work. You are working with people who are equally traumatized, people who are equally mentally ill, if I can put it that way, who are living without diagnosis. They probably don't even understand what is happening to them. You have students who come to your office and they tell you about their stories, and you have to carry these stories and find ways of at least listening if you can't do anything much. And of course, the politics, the beat down, the imposter syndrome that comes with academia, the rejection, the all of those things, of course, are going to have an impact. And I think when I say I'm burning out or I'm burned out right now, it's because I'm feeling like, to a point where I started thinking maybe I'm going through a midlife crisis or an existential crisis. And I'm like, but I'm still too young for that. It's because of the work that you do. It demands so much from you, so much. Like it stretches you thin to the point where you can't give anymore. Like right now, I can't give. I've just finished my four master students, and I allow them to submit. And I'm literally on my knees. And I was just telling my family, I'm not sure whether I'm physically ill or mentally ill, but I'm not okay. I can't work. I try to open my laptop. I sleep. I fall asleep. And that's how you know that something major is gonna come. So this is where I start taking the step to get myself helped. So the next thing I've done, make a booking with my therapist, and we start talking about what I'm going through, what are the symptoms, and then we find ways of dealing with those. But
And
yeah,
don't you just think
yeah,
that sometimes, as in this case, what you just need is to be gracious to do and take some time off, maybe for a week or two, and just spend time resting in bed? Don't you
yeah,
think that? Uh,
that's what we need. But we are also highly ambitious and we commit to things that we shouldn't, because we still want to put our names out there. And we sometimes struggle to say no when we get invitations to write a paper, to present at this, to do this. That those are all the things I'm starting to learn now, because they take so much of my time and they take so much of my time away when I know for a fact that I'm replaceable. We are all replaceable. You will have a mental breakdown and die in a week's time. Your post would be advertised and people have moved on with their lives. So I think it's not fair for me to keep pushing myself this much at the risk of not only my mental health, but now I've seen that it's also now manifesting in physical illnesses.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think you because you've been in academia longer than I have been. I think you've started doing that at a late stage. I've told myself from this year that I'm just not taking whatever comes, because
Hmm.
before that is what I would do, but now I'm just prioritizing my well-being,
Yeah.
because as you correctly say, no one is irreplaceable. If anything happens to you and I, we will be replaced in X number of hours.
Exactly.
Lewis died. It's sad. We must think about who's going to be teaching geography. Oh, now you're no longer teaching geography or
Yeah.
whatever module that you're teaching now. You know, so for me, I think we just need to be wise, especially we the younger ones
Hmm.
who are in the academic space, because
Yeah.
it can either make or break you. And our approach, because we want to be overachievers, it ends up towing
Yeah.
us.
We don't pace ourselves.
Mm.
Yeah, we
I
take
know that
so
very well.
much. Yeah.
I know
We,
that very
we
well.
take
But
in so much, and in the end, I mean, we're also chasing these big titles, doctor, professor, this and that, researcher, this and that. But at what cost?
At what
Like,
cost?
what do we have
That's
to
a very good
lose
question.
to get all of this? And that's what people don't know. When people clap about our achievements, they don't know what we have lost in order to
Yeah.
get to where we are. And we lose a lot. We lose ourselves, we lose our minds, we lose friends. And that's not, I don't think that's how life was designed for us to live. I think we need to take breaks. We need to be with people. We need to socialize. We need to hang out with friends. We need to spend time with our families outside of work. It can't be healthy that on a Saturday night at 10 p.m. I'm on my laptop working, and I wake up on a Sunday and I continue working until Monday and Tuesday and every day basically. And you think that's life. It cannot be.
Yeah,
It doesn't make
definitely.
sense.
Definitely. On
Mm.
that note, I hope you're going to be kind to yourself and you're going to seriously put your foot down and say, I'm not doing one, two, and three. I am prioritizing things that matter the most.
I
With
will
that
try.
said, I'm hoping that I'm going to read your papers sooner than later on mental health. I think you'll make a significant contribution to the space,
Yeah.
theoretically. And yeah, thank you so much, Ndu. I truly appreciate your time and
Thanks, buddy. Thank you so much. Sharp,
awesome.
sharp. Sure.
Cheers.